Hello and welcome to the 2026 Open Day Countdown, a series where we're counting down to opening day by previewing all three teams in MLB. Yesterday we spoke about the Athletics, and today we're talking about the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays finished with a record of 77-85 last year, 4th place in the AL East. While they did lose some guys, they did trade up away for their big league pieces. They're one of the teams who can always really find value out of nowhere, so they're always going to be sort of in the mix, as you can say. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the offense isn't too great. They only have three solidly above average hitters in Caminero, Yandy, and Ronda. All three are guys who overperformed their BFIP, and I think that's partially due to them playing in a minor league park last year. But because they're moving back to the Trop, which is actually more of a pitcher friendly park, they can actually maybe perform a little bit below these expectations. But they're still solidly above average hitters. And while they do have and they also do have some guys who are sort of in this 90 range, like Fiducia, Malloy, Vladi, it's actually small sample for like Fraley as well. But if you, they're also one of those teams who really platoon a lot. So if you look at the splits, you can see, Fiducia is actually quite good against Rays because he's a left-handed hitter, and against lefties they have Nick Fortes as their other catcher, who's better against lefties. So I think at catcher they're sort of going to platoon those two. And then also they traded away Josh Lowe, but they did get Gavin Lux, who's sort of a similar archetype, good against righties, not so good against lefties. Lux, I think he's also going to get platooned. I know the BFIP plus wasn't that great, but he was bounced around. I know that he said that has affected him a bit, so that's something that I could see a bounce back out of him, definitely. Yeah, the offense isn't too great. You do have Aranda, Aranda again, he has platoon splits against righties 157 WRC plus, 134 BFIP plus. Against lefties, you can see not as great, even though the WRC plus was good. Yeah, against lefties, he has a Cam Norris still great. You also have Vladi, who I think will be for side platoon. Same with Malloy. I know the sample sizes aren't too great, but they're also guys who performed that well at AAA. Like Malloy, he had a 142 BFIP plus at AAA, and Vladi had a 126 BFIP plus. So those are two guys who project to be around average hitters, and they're right-handed hitters, so against lefties they're going to be better. So that's why I think they are probably going to be in a big leagues in sort of a platoon role. One more guy I want to touch on before we get into the pitching is Cameron Simpson. He wasn't that great offensively, like literally zero barrels last year. Has no power, doesn't really get walks. I know strikeouts are low, but they're not low enough given these other two numbers, so that's why BFIP plus is extremely low on him. But he's someone again who could probably outperform just because he's extremely fast. So those infield singles that typically don't result into hits, he's someone who's fast enough that can turn those into hits, and that's why the 88 WC plus could be what his future is. But it remains to be seen. Yeah. Now onto the pitchers. Ian Seymour is an arm I really like. He was sort of used in a long relief role, and he had a 3.63 ERA, 3.25 BFIP. And at AAA, he was also excellent. He had a 2.62 ERA and a 3.20 BFIP in 86 innings over 15 starts. So he's someone who I think should be in that big league rotation, but you have Rasmussen, Martinez, Pepio. You're getting McClanahan back. You also signed Steven Matz, who's a reliever turning into a starter. So he's someone who I think projects in a long relief role, and when we get into particular lineups, we'll get into that a bit more. But yeah, Rasmussen, Martinez, Pepio, as I said, they're going to be on a big league rotation. By BFIP, they're not as great, but again, you're moving back into a much more pitcher-friendly park in Tropicana, so yeah, they're pitchers that can probably overperform these peripherals. And Rasmussen, again, he didn't really pitch that deep into games. You can see 31 starts, but only 150 innings, so he was sort of tapped out at 5 innings to start. If he pitches deeper into games, maybe he takes a hit under BFIP and that affects his ERA. But other than that, we're not really sure. Yeah. And then let's get into the relievers. Again, I think the Rays are known for having great relievers, and as you can see, they have a ton of studs over here, like Garrett Clever, sure, Griffin Jacks, and also Edwin Iseta. Those are three guys that are in their closer mix. Useta, you can see like by BFIP, he's the worst of the three, and also he's someone who is hurt, who's hurt right now, could maybe miss opening day. And so because I didn't put him in my predicted lineups, but if he was, he'd be a setup man, and we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, I think Griffin Jacks is a closer just because Clevenger is more of a lefty, and he's sort of that lefty specialist, I'd say, even though he has been pretty solid against righties. But yeah, like Griffin Jacks, bad ERA, very good BFIP, just very good peripherals across the board. He's yet to he hasn't have many save opportunities in his career, but I think this year's the year where he finally gets those opportunities. But yeah, the Rays, they have a ton of arms outside that. Cole Sulser, Manuel Rodriguez, he's hurt. But yeah, he's someone to consider. Steven Matz, he was a good reliever last year, but he's going back to the rotation. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but hopefully you can get something good out of him. You can see 76 innings, he's already sort of built up, which you like to see. And then also Brian Baker, Steven Matz, Mason Engler, also some above average arms. Wilson, another guy who's gonna miss the year with start the year with an injury. I'm not sure what his timetable is for return. But Baker and Engler are good middle of the bullpen relievers. Yeah, let's get into the predicted lineups. As I said, at catcher, I have a platoon of Fiducia and Nick Fortes. Fiducia, small sample, but he was good against lefties. And I think that, good against righties, and I believe that he was also good against righties at AAA. So he's probably going to get platooned with Nick Fortes, who wasn't as good, that good against lefties, but he was definitely better than Fiducia. He's -8 BFIP plus, which you don't really see that often, to be honest. Yeah. At first base, I actually have Aranda sort of in platoon, so Yandy Diaz is a DH against righties, but Malloy is a guy who I think should be in the lineup against lefties, but he can't play first base, so what I do have is I have Yandy Diaz shifting over to first against lefties, and then Malloy sort of platooning with Aranda in this sort of like first base / DH setup. Again, like Aranda, he's one of those guys who was good against lefties, but it remains to be seen if he can sustain that. So that's why I have him platooned. But like Fangraphs doesn't have him in a platoon, but I think he probably ends up being platoon maybe by the end of the year, just because if he hits more like this rather than this, the Rays are very aggressive with their platoon, so they're a team who could probably, deploy him in that role. At second base, I have a platoon of Gavin Lux and Ben Williamson. These are two guys that they actually added over the offseason. Both in actually some 3-team trades. Gavin Lux is in the trade where they traded away Josh Lowe to the Angels, and Ben Williamson they got from the Mariners in that deal that sent Brendan Donovan to the Mariners. Against righties, Gavin Lux wasn't too great by BFIP plus, and against lefties, Williamson again wasn't too great, but they're two guys who I think expect to at least be solid at second base. Like usually at second base you don't get a ton of production. It's one of the weaker positions of baseball, in my opinion. So isn't a great second base tandem, to be honest, but it's definitely not the worst. At third base you have Caminero, again, all-star level talent. 129 WC plus, 120 BFIP plus. He's just a very good hitter. Not a ton of walks, but doesn't strike out that often, and also gets a ton of barrels. I actually expect the walks to go up a little bit just because now that he's sort of burst onto the scene, pitchers know like the kind of damage he can do, and I think they're gonna try and pitch around him a little bit more, and that's gonna affect his walk rate a bunch. Like he starts to get intentionally walked more, and that's really gonna push this up. Yeah. First up, I actually have Carson Williams. You could probably go with Taylor Walls, and I wouldn't mind that, but I think Taylor Walls, like, he is better defensively, but like you can see the bat is just not that great, and I get that Carson Williams, like, the bat is worse, but he's their shortstop of the future, I guess you could say. So I think Williams is someone that they really need to be find a spot in the big leagues. And I actually don't really have Taylor Walls in the big league roster. I think what ends up happening is that Taylor Walls ends up winning the starting shortstop job. But this is a position that I think Carson Williams should have, like, maybe if you still want to fit Taylor Walls into the roster, maybe you replace uh Ben Williams him with Ben Williamson with him. So like take Ben Williamson off of the roster and put Taylor Walls in, just because I really think you need to find a way to get Carson Williams to develop. Maybe that's in AAA, maybe that's in majors. We'll see. Kendall Simpson, I've already touched on, like not that great offensively. Well, he's okay defensively, but he's definitely improved in that regard, and I think he'll step up a little bit more this season. In center field, I have Static Mullins. Mullins offensively wasn't too great, but against lefties, he was still pretty good. 120 WC plus, 103 BFIP plus. I don't really see him getting platooned, and Kangas agrees Roster Resource has him uh, playing every day just because he is a left-handed hitter, so he's actually someone you sort of like showed off reverse platoon splits. So it's like it's just like someone who I don't really see a reason for. There's also like too many platoons on this roster. You can't really platoon everybody, so someone has to like play every day, and I think Mullins is one of those guys, and Simpson as well. Roster Resource has Simpson in a platoon, but I don't really see that just because again, like the splits weren't that drastic between righty and lefty for Simpson, as you can see. And then right field I have platoon Jake Flay and Ryan Filati. Uh, fairly solid against righties. Filati good against lefties. Decent platoon there. Just, yeah, not really much to touch on. And then the bench is just like a bunch of guys who are not playing that day because the bench is like full of platoon guys. So the rotation, I have Shane McClanahan at the top. Uh, Drew Rasmussen has a 2, then Pepio, Martinez, Mats has the 5 just because like he's the biggest question mark. Martinez, he's someone who I think is most likely to be in this long relief role, but I think Seymour ends up being in that long relief guy. I believe Fangas does have Yoenis Gomez in the long relief, but if you look at Gomez and his stats to spring training, so far he's pitched in 3 games, and all 3 games he's pitched just 1 inning. So he's sort of been used in sort of like a single inning relief role. So that's why I have him sort of like in this middle relief, sort of like maybe getting a bit of leverage opportunities. And Yoenis Gomez is also like a guy who pitched really well at AAA. He had a 2.12 ERA and a 3.02 BFIP in 46 and 2/3 innings at AAA. So I think he's someone that can really do well. Like he has very good stuff, like a very flat fastball that it's just like 96, I believe. So that's like it's a very good mix, very good, decent command, and just like a very good reliever overall. Yeah, Griffin Jax as a closer again. Like I think Carpenter could get some saves. So can Useta when he comes back from injury, but I think Griffin Jax ends up being the primary closer where he can really show off why he's one of the best best relievers in baseball. Cole Sulser, I have in the start role just because Useta may not be on the roster on opening day. But yeah, Cole Sulser, like small sample, but he's someone who's performed really well. A sub 2 ERA, although just barely, 240 BFIP. So yeah, really someone who can really step up in the bullpen. Brian Bacon and Mason Engler, 2 guys again who are also better than average. Gunnar Gomez and also Hunter Bringy turning out that bullpen. He wasn't that great last year, but he has good stuff. A good ERA in a small sample. I guess you're hoping that he sustains that even with the good stuff, even though the bad BFIP, bad peripherals. Yeah, if Useta is ready by opening day, or like when he comes back, I think Biggie is just a clear guy to bounce off of that bullpen. Yeah, it's a good pitching staff, decent offense, so yeah, it's you do have some good hitters at the top, but not really many guys after that. Like after these 3, it's really just Gavin Lux, Mullins, Fraley, Palacios, Walls, and some of these guys you're rostering because of their defense. So their pitching staff is pretty good, but the offense is definitely lacking. So that's why the projections have them at 74 and 88, which would be 5th in the AL East, I believe. Yeah. So it's sort of similar to where they were at last year, but I think they can definitely overperform. Like, let's say Ian Seymour gets a full season as a starter. He's someone I think can definitely have a 2-win season. Mets, maybe he gets the 2-win season because he pitcher maybe he does well in that starter role, and then that's when like the wins start to creep up. But also again, like if Steven Match pitches well, like he's someone who could get traded at the deadline. Same with Mullins, if he hits well, he could get dealt at the deadline. But then like it's sort of this sort of not necessarily purgatory, but like not bad enough to be like a terrible record to get a high pick, but not good enough to be in contention for a wildcard spot. So, but yeah, it's still a pretty good team. Like obviously not the best team in baseball, but it's also like a tough division. Like it's really hard to compete in the AL East. Like you look at rest of the teams 97, 87, 87, and even the Orioles who are like who did made a lot of moves there at 80. So yeah, it's you need a ton of talent to compete in the AL East, and I don't really see the Rays having that talent. But again, the Rays they're one of those teams who can always like find talent out of nowhere. So they're definitely a team who can definitely overperform this projection, but I'm not too confident in that. But we'll see. So yeah, that's all I have for the Rays. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.